Hey guys, Lytane here, and I've got a little bit of a guilty pleasure when it comes to movies. I really enjoy a monster film, just like a giant creature that goes on a rampage, destroying a town, maybe fighting other monsters, showing that humanity is pretty useless and pathetic as we can't even stand up to a giant beast. Oh, it's just so much fun. I enjoyed the films like King Kong and even the more recent Pacific Rim, but there's one monster, one classic monster that America tried to do a take of. So in today's episode of Is It Worth It, I'm going to be looking at the 1998 film of Godzilla. Now when I say Godzilla 1998, I mean the movie that was released in 1998. I have to make this distinction because Godzilla has such a rich and long history in the movie world. Originally created by Toho in 1954, this beast was born due to the fear that the Japanese had with nuclear fallout and radiation. And well, they had a good reason too after the events of World War II, to be honest. The movie is a simple one. Godzilla is a huge lizard, dragon, dinosaur kind of beast that attacks and destroys a major city. It's a pretty fun movie and the destruction is great and it's mostly practical effects. This movie was a success and spawned many sequels where Godzilla would often fight other monsters like Mothra or Mechagodzilla. With such a popular monster, it was only a matter of time before Hollywood saw it and wanted to take a run at it for their own story. This movie is a simple one and it doesn't tie back to any of the things that Toho did. It was trying to be its own original creation. But fun fact is later on, Toho actually said that this is canon, a part of their major Godzilla thing, but it's not real Godzilla, it's actually a beast called Zilla, and it's complicated, don't worry about it. Godzilla is created in a similar way, with radiation mutating some kind of lizard to an extreme size. And being that big, boy is he hungry, and fish are his main source of food. He follows some boats and fishing parties towards New York, where he then goes on to rampage and destroy most of the city. Enter Nick Totopoulos, or the worm guy to everybody else. He is a scientist studying how radiation can change animals and worms. Really exciting stuff. Seeing as how he is the best person for the job, the US Army forcefully enlists him to study these strange footprints and sightings people have been having. Before you know it, Godzilla finally gets to New York and starts attacking the whole city. It's pretty devastating and the whole of Manhattan has to be evacuated in the process. Meanwhile, Nick's ex-girlfriend Audrey is a struggling reporter trying to land a story to get her face on primetime television. She and her cameraman, nicknamed Animal, have been trying to get footage of the story for Godzilla and they meet up with Nick to get the scoop. But it only causes him to get fired from the team when she steals sensitive information. The army have been doing what they usually do with guns and missiles, though they have been having a hard time hitting Godzilla because he is cold-blooded. Their heat-seeking missiles just can't get a lock. While this has all been going on, the French version of the CIA have been eavesdropping and trying to help with the problem because they don't trust the American army, and they know that this is a problem that needs to be fixed. And it's a big problem indeed, as they learn that Godzilla has laid some eggs. It's asexual. This means it can reproduce with itself, and if they hatch, we'll have an army of these monsters on our hands. So our heroes form a ragtag group with Nick, Audrey, Animal, and the French guy Philippe as they go egg hunting. Can they destroy these eggs, take down Godzilla, and restore peace to the city? Only if they have a lot of fish. When I was growing up, I was exposed to so many different kinds of films because my family just loves them, especially my dad. We would go to the movies all the time, see all the latest films that were out. We went to the video store often to rent new movies, and when the internet became a thing, we also went to those dodgy places to find new movies as well. So with all of that, I only knew a little bit about Godzilla, and I'd only seen one film up until that point, Godzilla vs. Mothra, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. So when I heard that there was a new Godzilla film in a language that I could actually understand, I was so excited because I'm like, yeah, Godzilla monster film. I'm not gonna lie, child me thought this was one of the best films ever made in history, but take that with a grain of salt. Child me is a dumbass, because I also thought that The Phantom Menace was the second best Star Wars film ever made. I know, I feel the shame. I am ashamed for my past self. Looking back at this movie now with my now more mature and older brain, the fact that I understand cinematography a lot better, and I've seen a lot of great movies and a lot of bad movies as well, so I have a much broader experience. Going back and watching this, ooh, it did not live up to my memory as a kid, that's for sure. Maybe that's a bad thing as well, because I can't enjoy things as much as I did when I was a kid, so I guess I've lost a little something. But let's get into the movie. First off, the characters in this are all pretty bland and pretty stupid. The main character, Nick, played by Matthew Broderick, is an awkward scientist that is pretty good at being the only kind of smart person in the movie and how he goes about figuring out the monster and its habits. No joke, he is probably the only kind of smart person in the entire film. Like, no one in the entire army thought to lure Godzilla with a bait and try and trap it. No one thought to find out where its nest of eggs were before killing it. Even though he is awkward, he is fairly likable, but he does have a lot of lines which are just odd. But I'll go into those later. For the lead, he feels weak, but most of the characters do in general. Audrey, played by Maria Patillo, is another character that is weak. She wants to be a real news reporter and does some pretty stupid things in order to get there. I understand her motivations, but she doesn't think about the consequence of her actions, and really she doesn't even get any sort of backlash on herself for them. She's a generic love interest, and they tried to give her some personality, but she really doesn't have any. Animal is the cameraman of the group, played by Hank Azaria, who you might know from The Simpsons. He plays like Mo Sizlak amongst other people, but in this movie, he still annoys me. He is gung-ho and always charging in to get that great shot because that's his passion. Fine, I don't mind that, but he is an idiot and doesn't even get any really good footage. When he first sees Godzilla, he just stands there, doesn't point the camera, and almost freaking dies for nothing. It's a little frustrating, but he does have a good heart, so I don't hate him personally, I just hate all the stuff he does in the film. There's also a bunch of military guys that I don't care about, and the mayor, who are just cardboard cutouts of real people. The mayor himself is actually a dig at a famous movie reviewer called Roger Ebert, because he said that Roland Emmerich films aren't very good. He gave poor reviews on both Independence Day and Stargate. So to get back at him, Emmerich made a corrupt and crappy mayor with his name. Good old slander. When Ebert talked about this film, he was like, this is petty. Why would you even put me in this film to insult me? And the worst part is that you didn't even give me a cool death. Like, you didn't even let the monster kill me. What's up with that? The last main character, though, is played by Jean Reno, called Philippe. He's actually pretty interesting and most certainly the best character of the entire movie. He's a little mysterious, smart, and a bit of a badass. He has some humor as well, but most of the time it's just him doing things that need to be done. It really shows how stupid the American army can be at times because they refuse to get outside help even though this situation needs it. Now, honestly, the absolute main character of this film is the guy in the title, Godzilla. He is this massive beast that causes wanton destruction and gets rid of a lot of people as well. He destroys cars, buildings, planes, jets, eats a lot of fish, but he doesn't kill any humans, and that's because this is a PG-13 film, but it is implied that he probably did kill them. He causes massive amounts of destruction in the city by just grazing up against buildings and destroying them. The massive footprints that he leaves on the ground every time he takes a step is just staggering. He certainly lives up to the old Godzilla brand in this regard. The look of him is decent enough as well. No longer is it a man in a rubber suit destroying cardboard buildings. No, it's mostly CGI. There are a few practical effects as well throughout the film, like when Nick first meets him and they come up really close. That's a real practical effect. And the practical effects still look better than the CGI. The CGI looks a little bit dated. The design of Godzilla this time is also vastly different to what he's usually looked like in the other Toho films. This is because in 1993 Jurassic Park came out and now dinosaurs were all the rage, so Godzilla looks pretty much like a dinosaur. He looks a lot like a T-Rex. And even though this film came out 5 years after Jurassic Park, the effects aren't nearly good enough. Like, they're not nearly up to the same par as a movie that came out 5 years earlier, which is just a shame. Honestly though, whenever Godzilla is on the screen, which apparently is only 11 minutes of the film, and it's like a 2-hour film, so just take that into consideration. Whenever he is on the screen, he does cause wanton destruction and everything that you would hope for a Godzilla film. It's just that he's not around long enough. Now that we have looked at the pieces that make up this movie, let's look a little bit more closely at the story and its structure. Honestly, this thing is just all over the place. The movie starts with a long opening credit sequence setting up the feel of the movie with the bomb tests and the lizards and stuff. It takes a while, but it does set the mood well enough. We then jump to Godzilla being crazy, killing a boat full of people. It's dark and you don't really get to see much, but you do get to see quite a bit of the monster for one of the opening scenes. It goes back to being slow again as we get introduced to Nick as he finds out about Godzilla with a footprint. As the movie just slowly chugs along, you just wait until Godzilla finally erupts out of the ocean in this crazy cool and really stupid scene. He runs around causing destruction and being cool, and then we have to go back to the slow because we have to start building those characters. characters. Basically, the pace of this movie can't decide what it wants to be. Instead of building up the tension over a few scenes and then letting you get hyped for a monster before it finally reveals it to you, it reveals way too much way too quickly and then tries to build up the tension again. Honestly, if they had just cut out the scene where Godzilla fights the boat in the middle of the ocean, or maybe just do a little bit of that scene instead of the whole thing, it would build up the tension so much more. Then when he finally erupts out of the ocean with that cool pier scene, it would be even more effective. Honestly, it's just a bunch of missed opportunities here. When Godzilla's finally on screen, the movie then continues to go all over the place. It has high action from Godzilla and eventually the babies, and then fairly boring stuff in between with the characters that you don't really care about. Honestly, it feels like two different films a lot of the time because they don't really mesh well together and the human parts are just so dull. Honestly, there are so many dumb parts of this film, and this is the perfect time in order for me to just go through all of them. This is my list of dumb shit in Godzilla. First off, Godzilla smashes through this building whilst it's off screen, and it just is so incredibly stupid. How is this building still upright? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. If Godzilla had walked through this building, it would have crushed all, just fallen down completely. It wouldn't have just left a nice round hole in it. That just makes no sense. Not only that, you gotta think, how did Godzilla walk through it? Why would Godzilla, this big beast, just walk through a freaking wall? Most animals don't walk through walls when they go through things. But then you gotta think, like Godzilla, because it's a wall, it would have had to step over the base and make sure that its legs didn't get tangled up on the bottom of the building to create such a perfect hole. It's just so ludicrous and stupid. Then there's this scene where Animal meets Godzilla for the first time, and as a kid I thought this was great. It was pretty fun and cool at the time, but now I'm looking back at it going, what the actual fudge? He is supposed to be a cameraman, and a pretty adept one at that, but he just stands there. He doesn't even film Godzilla, this thing rushing towards him. You think like he would at least point the camera in the general direction. Then when everybody else is running out of the way and getting out of this thing's, huge monstrous rampage, he just stands there and watches. It is so silly, and then he manages to survive because when Godzilla's foot comes down, he stands in between the toes. It was just a lucky break that he didn't die. Honestly, it's a little bit fun, I guess, yeah, but it's so stupid. And then you find out later they didn't even get any good footage out of that. He had the absolute best time to film him, and he didn't even do it. Then there's all the slapstick humor that happens near the end of the film when all the babies of Godzilla are running around chasing our heroes through the stadium. Honestly, it's so much like a Looney Tunes show, and it's just ridiculous. Maybe that's how that hole in the building worked before. It was Looney Tunes. Because these monsters, okay, they're just born and everything like that, but they're running through and they're slipping over gumballs and basketballs, and they're doing the whole I'm gonna bite you and just miss thing. It's just ridiculous. Not only that, there's about 200 of these guys in this stadium. That's what they say, how many eggs there. They guess to be about 200, and not one of them gets eaten. Not one of the main characters, I should say. A couple of the side characters do get eaten, but you gotta think, 200 versus 4, and these are hungry dinosaur baby thingies, and they really want food, and they try really hard to get to them, but they just all fail. It's ridiculous. It would never work. They would have died in seconds if it was in real life. Still going on about this scene, Godzilla laid 200 eggs here, and that just baffles me. That's a lot of eggs, and you can see how huge these eggs are. That's a lot of eggs in such a small, fast span of time. That means she just would have been pumping them out. But then I gotta think, how did they get in all of these crevices and stuff? Some of them are in like smaller alleyways and stuff like that, not in the main stadium. And how does it come out of Godzilla in the first place? Is it normally like a chicken? She just like stands over the spot, lays the egg, it plops down, then moves along like one step and then does it again, and then moves along one more step and then does it again, because it has to be done so accurately, or else what? I can't think of any other way. Does it like throw up the eggs and it just shoots them as projectiles, and wherever they land, that's where they're gonna hatch? I don't know why they made him 200. I think it was just to have this great number, but honestly, it doesn't make any sense. This is the best line of the film.
That's a lot of fish.
No, wait, maybe this is the best line of the film.
What's with the chewing gum?
Makes us look more American.
The fact that this huge beast that makes earthquakes pretty much whenever it steps anywhere just disappears. Literally disappears. This is a ninja dinosaur thingy. It is God Ninja, not Godzilla, honestly, because it just like puff of smoke disappears and no one can explain how or why. In one part of the film they're chasing after it while it's ducking through all the buildings and stuff, and then they just magically lose it. How? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's implied that it goes into the sewer systems, but no sewer entranceway is big enough to hold Godzilla, like big enough to get Godzilla in there, and even if she did go through the floor, it would be a massive hole in the ground. Plus, whenever she moves, she makes small earthquakes, so wouldn't they just use like a seismograph or something to find out roughly where she is? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Oh my god, they even try to bring it up in the film, like, how would you lose them? It's like, I don't know, and they just never address it. They're just like, we couldn't think of a good reason for Godzilla not to be in this part of the film, so we just sort of didn't give you a good reason either. It's so fucking dumb and so frustrating. This scene is so stupid. It has the people going through the giant sewers underneath Manhattan, and then one of them is a dead end. It's just this big weird rock tunnel, and Godzilla just happens to be there with its eyes closed, and then as soon as they turn around it moves away, and it makes silent steps. Like, oh my god, if I was this guy, I would have been like, that's a weird looking rock structure, for one, and then when it starts moving, I probably would have heard it because it makes freaking earthquakes every time it steps. It is just ridiculous. Why? But the biggest thing that boils my blood is the ending. Like I've told you, Godzilla has a long history in the East, and one thing that it's always true about it is the fact that the army and the human weapons barely do anything against Godzilla. It's just too big and powerful. So how do you reckon they kill Godzilla in this film? You guessed right, missiles and torpedoes. Yay! And not even many of them either, to be honest. Sure, they say he is cold-blooded and it's hard to get a lock on, but by the end of the film he gets trapped and they just blast him away. This is insanely anticlimactic because this is just not an inventive way to kill it. Even the lead up to its death is just them driving away in a car, which also reminds me of Jurassic Park as well. And then he just gets tangled in the bridge and makes for an easy target. This movie upset many fans of the Godzilla franchise when it came out, and Toho even made fun of it in one of their later movies. Most people say that as a monster film it's okay, but as a Godzilla film it just doesn't live up to the legacy. This movie also has a twist ending where one of Godzilla's babies survives, and that was going to be the start of the next film where apparently Godzilla was going to move to Sydney and then attack, Australia and stuff, which would have been cool, but because the movie tanked, we never got to see the two other movies that they had planned. They also had a TV show planned with Godzilla as well, which also tanked, so it just never really went anywhere because this form of Godzilla was just so crap. Honestly, I don't know why I enjoyed it so much as a kid, maybe because of those dumb lines and that action, but as an adult I can just see all these major plot holes and... So Godzilla is, in my opinion, not worth it. Bet you it was hard to figure that one out after watching this review, right? It is so uninspired. The movie just has crappy characters, poor pacing, everything about the story is just boring and bland. The fact that the lead character is constantly referred to as the worm guy just shows you how bad this movie is going to be. It's just one of those movies that you just hope for something better, and you do get some great scenes every now and then. It's just few and far between. Whenever Godzilla is on the screen, that's when it really shines. Although the effects might not be, 100% great, it's still fun to watch. Wanton destruction, all that kind of stuff. It's just fun. It's just a shame that Godzilla is barely in the film. Trying to watch through all that character development is honestly pretty boring, and I just don't recommend watching this. Instead, if you really want to watch Godzilla, maybe check out some of the Toho ones. Not all of them are great, because the very first Godzilla is a little boring by today's standards, but some of them are still fantastic, and they're still making them today. There's a reason why Godzilla has such a big following in Japan. It's because most of those movies are just fun, campy monster films, and go and watch those. Don't watch this 1998 version of it. Just skip it. So guys, tell me what you thought about Godzilla, the 1998 film. I'm getting sick and tired of having to say the 1998 film because there's actually another American Godzilla, which is the 2014 film, which only came out 3 years ago. And then of course there's the whole rich history of Toho and its Godzilla films. Oh my god, there's just so much Godzilla. It's like if I was going to talk about Batman, it's got so many different things. But anyways, tell me what you thought about Godzilla, especially this film, and what if you have any other relationship with the Toho franchise like I have. I've seen a lot of the Godzilla films now, and I appreciate them so much more because they're actually a lot of fun. They're not always the best, but they're definitely better than this shit. And don't forget to like and subscribe. But there's a lot of action, there's a lot of dumb humor, and there's a lot of lines that I don't remember. He destroys cars, jets, buildings, and a lot of fish, but he doesn't actually kill any humans because it's PG. There are just so many dumb scenes throughout this movie, and I think this is as good a part of that as